Jason, as it is each and every week, the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast is brought to the good people by Budget Blinds of Lee Summit.
Budget Blinds!
Hey, did you know Signature Series automated shades provide a safer environment for children and pets? Did you know it?
I did know that. And I will say, it's like all hail our robot shade nanny overlords.
Ooh.
They're here to take care
the robots
of
have
our
had
children
an
and
upgrade.
pets. They are here to take care of our children and pets, as well as make for maximum use for heating and cooling energy efficiency, so you can minimize the amount of time you need to run those systems, which lowers your energy bill, and it's a nice little hug for the planet while we're at it.
So if you are ready to make some upgrades in your home, go see our friends at Budget Blinds of Lee Summit. Tell them Jason and Nick sent you.
All hail.
Hello and welcome to the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast. In this Friday conversation episode, my guest today, he's an emergency guest. I dialed the numbers and Nigel Woodbury decided to come in and join me for our conversation today. Nigel, welcome.
Emergency guest. That's nice. Off the scrap heap. Scrap heap. I like that.
Well, yeah, I just want everybody to know I didn't really want you. I wanted somebody else.
I know who you wanted.
I wanted somebody else from your department.
Should I shame her when I see her?
Yeah, we'll shame her later. But you are, for those that don't know, Nigel Woodbury works at the Lee Summit City Hall. He is what exactly is your title?
Media Services Supervisor.
Ooh,
fancy, huh?
That sounds technical. You do all of the video and audio work for City Hall. That if you got log on and watch the city council meetings. If you're one of us,
if it doesn't work, it's probably my fault.
Yeah. So Nigel is the one. But Nigel, I had you on for another reason. Actually, it's because you are, for those that frequent the downtown Lee Summit bars and restaurants, or frequent many of the microbrews around Kansas City, or are active with ZZ Hops, the microbrew clubs.
Right.
They might know who you are.
Possibly.
Or
if you're on 3rd Street.
Yeah. Or if you're on 3rd Street, I'm going to call you the 3rd Street celebrity.
I like to call it like the ambassador.
The ambassador.
Celebrity is a little strong.
Okay.
I mean, I don't sign autographs. I don't take pictures with people. You know what I'm saying?
I thought it'd be fun though if you came on, because it's KC Restaurant Week. We're getting ready to start that up. So I thought maybe you and I could just do a fun little Lee Summit restaurant episode, and we can talk about some of our favorite stops for beverages and for food around town, and we can start really right here in downtown.
Absolutely.
You just hit a place before you came into the studio here at Bridge Space.
I did. Where did I go?
I think you went to Libations.
Is that part of Restaurant Week?
It's not, but we're calling it our Lee Summit Week.
No, I feel like I'm neglecting Chef Seth. So I put on my Libations shirt, went down there and had a cocktail, talked to him for a little bit. He's a good guy, and that's always a good place to start your Friday Junior.
Let me ask you this question, because you said you put on your Libations shirt before you went over to Libations.
Yeah.
Now, I am a kid of the 80s and 90s,
okay,
right? So I'm the very tail end. I might even be the last year or so of Generation X.
Okay.
We were always told you don't wear the band T-shirt to the same concert. Does that apply to your bars as well?
No, that's not true.
Oh, okay.
Because even as a beer guy, I'll wear a Fringe shirt to Fringe or a Fringe hat. It shows them love. They like that. The fact that I rolled up in there in this shirt that they don't even sell anymore, that still looks new because I take care of it. I'm sure Seth was like, yeah, that's my dude right there.
You turn it inside out before you wash it every time?
No, I never do that. I'll never do that. Is that a thing?
I think that's a thing, yeah. I think that's how you care for your T-shirts.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to try that. But some shirts... Come on, man.
No.
Some shirts are just bad shirts. Not every shirt is a Squints Apparel shirt.
That's true.
Which are my favorite
That's
shirts.
true. And he's another Lee Summit guy.
Have you had him on?
I have not.
Oh, you got to get him on, dude.
You're right.
And he's hilarious.
No, he's great. I mean, we talk to him when we go to the other restaurant where he works, at Stewie's. Let's start it this way. You got friends coming to town.
Okay.
Coming to visit you here in Lee Summit.
Okay.
What is your go-to restaurant? Where are you taking them first for Lee Summit food?
I'm going to take them to 3rd Street because it's close and it's good and the atmosphere is cool. It kind of shocks a lot of people that it's downtown Lee Summit. you know how it is, man. People are still shocked. Downtown Lee Summit has all this. Definitely there. Second, Frankie Fairlane's.
Oh, yeah.
I love Frankie's. They're probably not part of Restaurant Week, but they should be. I was at Frankie's today. Funny story. I'm walking home for lunch. I was going home for lunch. Then I see a buddy of mine I haven't seen him forever that's going to do a sales call in Pleasant Hill. He said, I'm going to Frankie's. You want to go? I'm like, well, let's go to Frankie's. This is always a good time to go to Frankie's.
Right.
So, but yeah, those are probably my two number ones. Doesn't even make sense. But yeah, I frequent those places for sure.
Well, I felt like that was a good way to start because a lot of times you get in Kansas City, you get the where you're taking visitors for barbecue, right?
Right.
And my answer is always, well, it depends on what we're ordering.
True.
I don't really have a number one spot for KC barbecue, but it depends on what I'm ordering. Although I will say this, there is something about taking somebody that's never been to LC's.
Or Gates.
Because
you want to scare the hell out of somebody. Take them to Gates.
Take them to Gates. Well, or LC's because, they'll help you when they're good and ready.
LC's is, because I had a buddy come to town. I think he was living in Sacramento at the time. And, a lot of people don't know about burnt ends, right?
Right. Well, that's a Kansas City creation.
Yes. So, and it was funny because it was probably 3 years ago and the Saints were coming to town playing the Chiefs. And the wait was so long. But it was cool to be able to explain to people from New Orleans what burnt ends were because they had never heard of it.
Right.
So that was kind of cool.
But
yeah, LC's is a trip. I wouldn't want to work there. You see the guys that work in that is an oven? You call it an oven?
Pit.
The pit. I mean, their arms are like all burnt up. I'm like,
oh yeah,
who wants that job?
They're charred.
I mean, that's part of the charm, I guess.
I guess so. So I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer the Lee Summit question almost the same way. Like it depends on what I'm going for. If I want to take somebody for tacos,
right.
I really only have one spot. The number one spot, the first choice.
Okay.
It's going to be a little place called El Mercadito.
Been there.
It is. It's street tacos.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most authentic street taco place you can go in Lee Summit.
Is that the place where the children serve you?
I'm not going to comment because I want to make sure that it stays open.
No, that is a good spot because I take my daughter over there and it's authentic for sure. I mean, they have things, and it's a cool little Mexican market too. So you get things in there. I'm like, okay, what's that? I want that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you want to know where to get the avocados. You're making guacamole for a party. That's the place to go.
Right.
Or where else can you buy cactus leaf?
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't think I've ever had cactus leaf. What are you doing with that?
You're making some dishes there, some Mexican dishes. We're gonna have to get you some recipes. You need some new recipes.
Are you a cook?
Yeah, a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm not. I'm not, dude. You know what I got today?
What?
I got an air fryer.
All right. We were going to talk about restaurants, but we're going to stop here. I have not succumbed to that pressure yet. Like, I'm late to that part. I will say this, though. I own 2 Instant Pots. But I do not own an air fryer.
Well, everybody in my department has one. So I went on YouTube. I'm like, oh, because I'd eat a lot of vegetables and things like that. I'm like, that is kind of cool. So I'm going to fool. I literally got it today, took it out of the box. I'll get some things and see what happens. I don't know.
You might want to go to the store tonight or tomorrow. I don't know if you heard.
Snowmageddon number two. I do have a 4-wheel drive, so I had no problems the last Snowmageddon, so I'm good.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
well, what are your favorite foods? I mean, we talked a little bit about where you're going to take people first when they visit you in Lee Summit, but what do you want to seek out?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I love vegetables. I love avocados. I love mushrooms.
That's very millennial of you.
That's rude. Avocados have been around forever.
They have.
I like that sort of thing. The thing that I loved when I go to like 3rd Street, that Nashville hot chicken sandwich.
Oh yeah.
Come on, man.
Oh yeah.
And get the Gouda mac and cheese.
All right. Two responses. One, I do the Nashville hot wings.
That's not enough meat.
Oh, well, look, my favorite thing about 3rd Street, really all of the restaurants that group owns, everyday happy hour, the 7-day-a-week happy hour. So you can go in and you get your wing, your Nashville hot wings as part of the happy hour.
Yeah.
you brought up mac and cheese.
Yeah.
There's a restaurant. They are participating in Restaurant Week. Smoke Brewing here in downtown.
Oh, they've got good mac and cheese as well. Yeah.
You might not walk out of the restaurant, but the breakfast mac and cheese, that's a good way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that thing is, I'm sure there is a Surgeon General's warning on the menu somewhere.
Right.
But it's so good.
And then get you a side of chicharrones.
Yeah.
Those chicharrones over there.
Oh, man.
I told somebody they make their own chicharrones. They're like, what? I'm like, yep, go to Smoke, because those things are ridiculous. Absolutely.
If you leave downtown, are there some places you go to downtown?
I love Jazzy Bees. I think Brandon does a really good twist on barbecue, and he's a great guy.
I think he might be one of the most underrated chefs in the area.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his black beans or his roast beans, his baked beans that have black beans in them. Who does that?
His crab cakes.
Yeah. Have you ever had the adult grilled cheese?
Oh yeah.
That's the most ridiculous thing ever. I got it with pulled pork in the middle.
Holy moly.
Yes. That's a field trip. You can't eat the whole thing. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, you can get whatever meat you want in the middle of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I took my daughter over there. She was like, oh, my God, I'm going to die. I'm like, you're going to take some to your mom? She's like, hell no. I'm saving this other half for myself. But, yeah, I love that place. I dig Pearl. I think Pearl does a really nice job, for seafood. I'm kind of an oyster snob. I like Gulf oysters. But they do a good job.
All right, so let's talk about that for a second. I like oysters too.
Right.
But I am in no way an oyster snob. I've had oysters I love. I've had oysters I don't love. I've had oysters at Pearl Tavern, and I've had oysters at I just lost it.
Jack's?
The horrible wings place. The wings chain.
The wings? They have oysters? What wings chain has oysters? You sure there's oysters? Is there one in Lee Summit?
No. Wow, this is horrible radio.
Wings and things?
No, the Hooters.
Well,
Hooters.
I was going. They have oysters at Hooters.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say Long John Silver's. Actually,
by the way, this is horrible audio.
It's fine. It's fine.
No, so what I'm saying is I've had oysters I love, oysters I don't love. What makes a good oyster?
Well,
you have. We'll get into a little Nigel background here.
Well, you have to
understand.
You've
spent time in New Orleans.
I'm talking about a particular type of oyster and prepared a particular way. I've done the raw thing. What's the point, right? Because you don't even chew them. That's no fun. I like
it.
I could go so many ways. I like charbroiled. If you go, one of my favorite, the creme de la creme of charbroiled oysters is Drago's in New Orleans at the Hilton, and there's one in Metairie as well. And they basically put them on open flame. They've got this secret butter sauce that they put over them, and if you go to that hotel and you sit and watch at the bar, it's the most tantalizing food preparation you'll ever see. And then they give you the French rolls coming out of the oven fresh. Yeah. So this is the thing about Gulf oysters. They're thicker, meatier, chewier. The shells are much thicker. It's a different kind of taste. Like I've been to Jack's Fish House on the Plaza. They do East Coast oysters. They're fine. They try to do the charbroiled. I was like, those are cool. But come on now. It's a different type of oyster, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
so
right.
That's why I'm a snob. I've had oysters in other places, and I just prefer the Gulf ones. It's just different. Somebody tried to tell me, well, they're that good because of the oil spill. I'm like, really? That's rude. They were good before that. So, but yeah, that's why I'm kind of an oyster snob.
Well, I think that's a good way to bring in for those that don't know you or want to get to know you. You come to Kansas City via England, Oklahoma, New Orleans, Houston, Kansas City, St. Joe. I can go crisscross a lot of the map.
I've lived across the coast.
You've got an interesting story of how you got here.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Gosh, grew up in England, lived there till I was 12. Stepdad Air Force, U.S. Air Force. My first foray to the United States was Crossett, Arkansas, on the border of Arkansas and Louisiana, which was interesting. Then Oklahoma City.
Not a thriving metropolis in Crossett.
No, but it kind of is. You know what's in Crossett, Arkansas? It's the paper mill.
Yes.
So when you get there, it smells like poop.
Right.
Because that's what paper mills smell like, which was interesting. And that was my first experience. It's just a sidebar. My first experience, I'm like, why you're driving down the road and people flash lights at you? Well, they're letting you know the police are on the other end. I didn't know that was the thing. Anyway, I digress. So, Oklahoma City. Then I got into television, and so I lived in Texas, a couple places, San Angelo, Tyler. But I've been coming to Kansas City since 1984 because I ran track in college, and indoor nationals was at Municipal Auditorium. And I just fell in love with Kansas City. I had a couple of guys at Oklahoma Christian where I went that lived here in Kansas City, and I'd come in the summers. I just loved it, dude.
Is there any better, in the Midwest, is there any better sports venue really than the old Municipal Auditorium?
I loved it. I mean, I ran there 4 years in a row. Imagine them sticking a track in there.
Right.
That's
crazy.
A wooden banked track. How crazy is that?
Well, how did they get that to fit? Because it wouldn't be regulation.
No, well, indoor track's different.
Oh, that's true.
Indoor.
That's true.
So it's not a 400 meters. So that track was 146 yards. So it was 2.5 laps for a quarter mile, and it's banked. And it was the most ridiculous thing ever. So just imagine this track. And then in the middle, there's the long jump pit and the pole vault pit, right? Just crammed in there. But, it was a good time. So that's how I fell in love with Kansas City.
Look, and I haven't been to Fog in Lawrence. That's one of the things that I haven't had a chance to do yet.
Right.
But I've been to basketball many, many other places.
Right.
Been to the Sprint Center, of course. I would pay more money. I love going to a basketball game at the Muni. It's a perfect basketball venue.
We've gone off the rails here, but
right.
What we do every year for the last probably 8 years, we go to the NAIA tournament. And so we'll take off on a Friday, pay that $20 ticket, get there at 9 a.m. We'll watch games until about 1. Then we'll go to Anton's, have a steak, come back and watch the night games. A whole day of basketball of teams you've never heard of. There's always some Missouri teams, Evangel, and
right.
But it's the cheapest basketball ticket in town, man. It's great.
And it's not names you're going to know.
No.
Unless you just happen to know, like, your friend's cousin that's playing at Evangel or something, right? It's good basketball, and it's in just this perfect, like, basketball nostalgia venue. I mean, you almost feel like you're watching Hoosiers.
I mean, this is how it goes. You're in there. You're going to pick a team.
Right.
You always do.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying? But no, that tournament, that precedes the NCAA tournament.
Yes.
I mean, back in the day when college basketball was not integrated, black players went to NAIA schools. So some of the best players you've ever heard of, Walt Frazier and some of these other players, they went to these small schools and played at Municipal. I mean, it's the craziest thing.
Yeah, the history that Kansas City has with that tournament
with NAIA, absolutely,
is incredible.
No, and the fact that it still goes on. The NAIA made a mistake probably 10, 15 years ago. They moved it to Tulsa for some god awful reason. I'm like, really?
Well, look, I don't know why anybody picked Oklahoma. I mean, I'm just gonna throw that out right now.
There's nothing wrong with Oklahoma,
it's the
man.
scariest state in our union.
How do you seriously?
I've driven through most of them.
But have you been to Mississippi?
Yes.
Okay. I think we talked about that. But anyway.
But I think this is funny. Is you have a TV radio broadcast background,
right.
which I'm only going to be slightly jealous that your radio voice is so much better than mine.
You can thank Jesus for that.
You told me earlier your DJ, your radio name.
Which one do you want?
That is.
You want the college one or the professional one?
The professional one is the better one.
Yeah, Nigel Knight.
Nigel Knight. I mean, that's a great radio name.
And I can't take credit for it. So I've lived all over the place. Lived in Atlanta at one point, and my first paid radio job was at WAPW in Atlanta, Power 99, and that was probably 1980. 9, and I was living in Atlanta. Crazy story. Right out of college, had you work any job, right? So I was working for this janitorial company in this building that had a radio station. And literally, the general manager walked up to me and struck up a conversation. Do you go to college? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I'm communications major. He's like, you got a demo? I'm like, yeah. Gave him my demo. They gave me a job. So my first professional job was in Atlanta. I would come, and there was this one guy, he was a 7 to midnight guy that was huge in Atlanta. I would come in Saturday night, watch him do his thing, and he would teach me all these things. And then at 2 a.m. when he got off, I got to do 3 hours live in Atlanta on the air. And
you just got dumped in.
Yes. And so at that point, I was still using my college radio name, Charlie Wood.
Not in the same league.
Yeah. So check this out. So I would do 3 hours on the air, and then we would run Casey Kasem for 4 hours, and I would run that. But back then, it was on records.
Right.
And we would do that first hour. You would put a card in for commercial. You flip that record over, and you did that for 4 hours. So fast forward, I moved back to Oklahoma City, and Brenda Bennett, who was the music director at Z99, ended up somehow getting this job, and she's like, "We're going to call you Nigel Knight." So she named me, and it stuck. So I was Nigel Knight, 7 to midnight on Z99 in Oklahoma City in the 90s.
Here's the big question. Will we ever get that thrown into a podcast out of Green Street at City Hall, or maybe will you grab the mic during a city council meeting? Nigel Knight on the air.
I would love to go back into radio. You know what I'd love to do? I would love to go do some classic rock or even a country station. That would be fun. You know what I'm saying? Get back on the mic. But it's so corporate right now. I'm like, how do you get a job at Intercom or whatever these places are these days? So
I have no idea.
Yeah. So,
I mean, look, I just decided to make up a podcast. So I don't know.
Well, that's there's something to be said for that.
Just grab a mic, man. Get on and start talking.
I've created television shows that exact same way. We just shot it, and it's like somebody's going to want it, and that's happened. So,
do you still use all of those? I mean, like you said, it's radio, it's TV, it's all these things. Do you still use all of those skills and all of those things in what you're doing for as basically a communications team?
Yeah.
For the city government.
Well, you probably know LSTV. Channel 2, Channel 99, Channel 134, depending on your provider, or you can watch it online. Weirdly, because when I first came to the city, they had nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, well, let's turn this into a TV station. So
how long have you been here?
Just 10 years this year, dude.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
Crazy. So I would just do voiceovers because there's nobody else. So now you're the voice of Lee Summit. Some people call me that. I've had people stop me in the store and be like, I heard your voice on the television. I'm like, really? It's weird.
What? Why are you watching that?
Yeah, and why are you stalking me? So no, I do. I basically, when I came 10 years ago, I had to really because I came from my last job before I came to Lee Summit. I was working in New Orleans at a TV station, and I had gotten out of television news and swore I would never get back in, and got back in, and that was my favorite year ever. That was the year in New Orleans of the oil spill.
Oh, wow.
New Orleans just is a different news market, and that was the year the Saints went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
So that whirlwind of, I was like, I want to do this again, but my family was here, and I didn't want to, so it took a bit of a mind flip to go from working in a newsroom where there's deadlines and coming to City Hall where I was basically creating, because they didn't know what they wanted or needed.
You weren't just making the content; you were figuring out what the content was going to be.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, everything that LSTV is now was basically my vision of, and all that. It's not. It wasn't magic or anything. I did anything that. I just took my TV experience. I just said, "Oh, let's make it a TV station," because all the infrastructure was TV station, but they had somebody running it from IT as other duties. And before that, it was run by the fire department, for God's sakes. You know what I'm saying? So they had all this, because when they built New City Hall, there was almost $200,000 worth of AV infrastructure.
Right.
All that stuff. And you watched the channel, and it was all slides. It was all PowerPoint. The live meetings, there were no graphics. You didn't know if it was live. You didn't know if it was taped. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. So all I did was just make it a TV station, and what you see now, it's what TV should be. If you pop up on the screen, I'm going to put your name up, Nick.
Like if I pop up on the screen for LSTV, something's wrong. Like there's going to be some people upset.
We can make that happen.
like that's not a good thing.
I mean,
nobody wants me.
Come on,
screen.
man. I had John Bedoin.
Well,
just saying.
All right. I wonder if it was for you leaving TV and the news business and going to city. In 2008, I was saying, my career path changed because 2008 happened. Right, like so many people in the country. When I got to corporate world, the hardest thing for me to figure out was a project that didn't just take a day.
Right.
Because I came from newspapers where, every day is kind of a new day.
Right.
You just start the process over. Every day you come in, start it all over. And the first time I got something on my desk that said, this is going to take 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I think I just stopped there with my tracks, my jaw on the floor. Like, what? But why? That was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. So your background is newspaper.
Yes.
Where did you start?
I started in Southeast Kansas and Southwest Missouri. I got to Lee Summit in late '98, early '99 at the Journal.
So as a reporter?
As a reporter, I did sports, and worked my way up as a reporter, editor, managing editor, and then I went to the corporate world. And I went to corporate newspapers. So I worked for Gatehouse Media, which is I think now the largest newspaper chain in the country. They just bought Gannett.
So what got you into wanting to get into news? What happened as a child?
Unbeknownst to me until later on, my grandfather, who was much older, he had my mother in his 40s. So he had, by the time I came around, he was already long retired, right? But he had 50 years as a printer. But I didn't know that until later on. When I went to college, I had delusions of grandeur. I went to college, was going to do the TV program, and then go to film school.
Right.
Sounds
familiar.
That dream didn't last long.
Right.
I actually just stumbled in. We had to take a news writing class. It was a requirement in the media path. Right.
And you went where?
I went to Missouri Southern.
Okay.
In Joplin, and I just met a few people, and they said, "Hey, can you come write? We need another sports writer." Okay, sure, whatever. And then I was just hooked. I went on. I finished college as the editor in chief of the college paper.
Yeah.
Went to a sports editor gig at a daily from there, at a small daily, and then just kind of worked my way up into the newspaper world and through that. And it was great. I mean, the only thing I never did was I never ran a press.
Okay.
Which, on my fingers.
Right. That's probably a good thing, right?
And then until 2008. So when I lost my job in 2008, I was laid off.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah, was a watershed year for everybody.
I lost my job because my boss had lost his job, and he was the COO that I reported to.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell everybody, his severance package much different than my severance package.
Probably.
I mean, mine wasn't bad, but his was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Funny story about the whole newspaper thing. In high school, I wrote for like the yearbook and the paper. So when I went to college, I'm going to be a newspaper guy, sports writer. First story didn't get published. I was like, change my major. That's how I ended up getting in radio.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I almost totally abandoned the TV stuff. I took some TV classes all throughout because I enjoyed it, and mostly I like the toys. I like to play with the cameras and the mics and all of that stuff. And I like being in charge, so directing's kind of fun too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of abandoned it really, really quickly. It just got kind of in my blood. I liked chasing stories. I like telling stories. I think that's the thing for me. And I assume probably you started as a photographer and a reporter. So I mean, I assume that's kind of the same. It's just a chance to tell
storytelling.
I get to meet somebody and tell their stories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, especially when I lived in LA, and my homeboy Race, he and I started together as what we used to call camera jockeys on the 10 o'clock news, running the big ass cameras, right?
Right.
And we had visions of grandeur at this TV station. We're like, this is too small for us. And so years later, when we got to LA, we're like, it's about storytelling. So when I first went to LA, we worked on this reality show. It was actually the first reality show that was ever on BET. It was called College Hill. And it was basically a reality show about incoming freshmen to different colleges. And, obviously we didn't get to cast the people, because casting, they want to cast people who, have fireworks.
They wanted pretty people.
But it was still about the stories. Still about the stories. So, even if I cast you
I would not have been cast.
But if you were, you definitely there's something about your life that has a story. And so everybody's life has a story arc. So I'm with you. It's all about human interests and storytelling.
Well, it's a cliche for a reason, right? I mean, everyone has a story is the cliche.
Right. But it's true.
It's true, right? I mean, it becomes cliche for a reason.
Yeah. I'm sure if we wrote a biography of your life to this point, it'd be pretty interesting. Well, and interesting only because I say you've worked in the media, so you just get to see some weird things people don't get to see.
Yeah, I've got to cover some cool things.
Yeah.
I've got to see some weird things.
Right.
I mean, I always say, and I've said it on this podcast before. We've talked about it, where the proudest career moment of my life was right here in Lee Summit, in the Journal, was 9/11. Was covering what happened that day and telling those stories of what happened here.
Right.
How it affected this little and the crazy thing was how many big story connections little Midwest Lee Summit had during that day.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And I never left my desk actually that day.
Right.
My job was to send the people out and collect the information and lay out the paper.
But still.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a watershed moment, and I mean, I can remember exactly where I was.
Were you in the media that day? During that?
I have my mother's Jamaican.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember that series on Fox, In Living Color.
Oh yeah.
Remember they said the Jamaicans. I got 24 jobs, man. You know what I'm saying? so yeah, I've had so many different jobs. At that time, it was weird. I was working at University of Central Oklahoma, and I was. They had an AV department, and I had like 12 student employees. So if you, as a professor, needed a projector on that particular day, somebody had to come to my department and check it out, and one of my employees would take it. So that day I was at work. That's when that happened. I had just gotten to work. It was So weirdly, one of my weird jobs. I was working for a university at the time.
Did you have TV where you were?
Yeah.
Were you watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We did not in the Lee Summit Journal offices. We did not have televisions.
Wow.
I had an old, if you remember the old boombox CD player radio,
right.
I had that sitting next to me, and so the only thing I had was radio and AP wire coming through on the internet, and the internet was a little taxed.
Yeah.
That day in 2001, and so I'm just refresh all day long. I didn't watch TV until about 2 a.m. the next day.
Yeah,
and that's when I really got to sit down and see the video, and it was about 4 or 5 hours later, about 6:30 in the morning, when it hit me, and it was no longer a story.
Right.
And I think you can understand that where it finally clicked that it wasn't a story, and it was like, oh.
No, I mean.
Oh, and that's when just everything kind of hit me. I remember it's like, oh my.
The Gulf oil spill, when I was at my last television gig, you're rushing around, and there were a couple of minor hurricanes that we covered. That you're in the midst of it, then you realize, like I remember there was the hurricane, not Katrina, but years later. It hit like Biloxi and places like that. And
was that Andrew? No.
Yeah, I think it was later.
Okay.
and just going there and doing the story, and then realizing, wow, this town is pretty much destroyed.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, we're covering this, but this is real.
Right.
It's
because you do flip a little bit of a switch, and it seems weird and callous and
no, you have to. You have to.
But you do flip a little bit of a switch to tell the story.
You have to,
and then later you're
like, wow, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I some of my when I worked in Tyler, Texas, I worked as a one-man bureau in East Texas, and I had to come up with my own stories, and some of the stories I would find. They were tragic, but you have to cover that story. East Texas was known for a lot of logging, and they had these little, 2-lane highways, and these big trucks, and you might live on that highway. And I'll never forget this story. I'll never forget it. This woman was going across the street to get her kid who had just gotten off the bus and got hit by one of those trucks. Oof. You know what I'm saying? So you have to tell that story, but you have to keep your composure at the same time. So, yeah, it's being a reporter is it can be hard. That's why when I did sports, because I was a sports anchor, one of my 24, 11 jobs, I never forget this news director when he was like, "Oh, you want to work in the candy shop?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" That's what they call sports.
That's funny. But I'm going to defend sports people here because one, you hear people, news reporters all the time talk about election night. Oh, I got to stay up all night. Let's order food in. That's every night for a sports person, right?
True.
Every night is huge deadline night, right?
True.
Right. And also even at sports, because the best stories when you're a sports writer. The best stories are those ones that aren't at the game.
Oh, absolutely.
The best stories are those things you find, and even some of those moments where you've got to flip that switch and not allow yourself to get that personal connection. Right. I mean, there were, where you cover a player who suffered a loss or a bus accident on a road trip. Yeah. Or, there are these great stories,
human interest
stories. But I mean, those are the stories you remember as the reporter.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll remember some great games, but I mean, I remember covering the great game. I remember covering it wasn't a great game, but it was a fun game. Was the 2007, I think, K-State at Mizzou, and it was that last year of Michael Bishop and who was the Mizzou quarterback? He went to play for the Jets.
No clue.
Anyway, that was a great game.
Right.
Two incredible quarterbacks.
Right.
Who got to go play in the league.
Right.
And it was their last game as seniors. That was fun. But the stories you really remember, the ones where you sat down in the bleachers after a basketball game and you had a real conversation with one of those athletes about something that had nothing to do with the game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those the sports part of my life was interesting as well. St. Joe. I was a weekend sports anchor in St. Joe of all places. And I to this day, I still love St. Joe. I had such a great time up there because I got to cover Northwest, Missouri Western, Benedictine.
I give St. Joe a lot of crap, but every person I know who's worked the media up there, who's covered sports up there, loves that time.
My days at KQ2, loved it, man. I mean, I to this day, I still have, I told you the other day, I still have friends that I worked with that were youngsters at the time because I was probably in my 30s when I worked there. I wanted to change the career. I'd been at Channel 5 for so long. I'm like, I'm not going to be here forever, So it was great. I had aspirations to go to ESPN, but that didn't happen because I have kids, But I look back, and those are great times. And even further back than that, when my first reporting job was in San Angelo, Texas, market 197 out of 203 or whatever it is, right? I worked there for 6 months. Then I went to East Texas and worked as a one-man band. And for some strange reason, every story that I thought was good, I saved it on tape. And I took it to maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I still have all these tapes. So I took it to Chad, down the street. And he put it on DVD, and I hadn't looked at these stories since 1992. And I'm looking at these stories, I'm like, and these are stories I had to go get myself.
Right.
I had the worst news director, ever, You know, I'll never forget one time she said, "That's the worst news story I've ever seen in my life." Really? Whatever. So I'm 3 years ago, I'm looking at this DVD. I'll have to show it to you sometime. I was like, I was a good reporter. Because, one man band, I shot my own stand-ups.
Right.
I mean, literally, I would get a light stand, do it to my height, set the camera up, move the light stand out of the way, and do my stand-up. It's craziness, dude.
The things you have to do.
And we're talking back in the day where it wasn't a one-piece camera. It was a little camera with an umbilical to a deck that was 45 pounds.
Right.
Ancient. So when I got to Kansas City, because my first job in Kansas City was at Channel 4 as a part-time photog. And they gave me a crappy old camera. But one of the chief photographers on the weekends, he's like, "You can use my camera." And he had like the Cadillac of cameras. I was like, "I'm dying, gone to heaven."
These are the greatest toys ever.
Oh my God. I'm telling you.
Do you get a chance to tell good stories where you're at? Is there a way that you get to kind of scratch that itch?
Some, yeah. The process is still the same. The way I go about it is still the same, but it's more informational. It's not really. We get a few things where we get to, tell stories. But if we're telling a story, it's about maybe a city service or it's not really the storytelling thing.
You and I got to do one together recently. I just thought of this. We had our annual Lee Summit Arts Council event.
That's one of the rare ones.
And you helped me. We sat down with we gave an award to
yeah. That's one of the rare ones where you get it
to Russ Berlin, and we got to sit down with him and tell that story.
To the city's credit, the creative services department now there's staff to be able to,
and it's a real department now.
Yeah, to be able to pull, because before, up until it was just everything that was produced, it was me.
Right.
Everything. I mean, there was no. I had a little bit of help. I don't know if you remember Caleb, who was around. He used to help, but it was still, my direction or whatever. So,
well, now you guys have this fancy suite where you sit up there in that corner.
Well, but still, even it's the video production side of it. It's mostly service oriented, so it's not really storytelling per se. That's why I do things, on the side that I can still dabble into storytelling. Like I did this. There's a place in Kansas City where if you're transgender, they will help you in the process of becoming whatever you want to become. And probably one of the best things I've ever shot, to be able to sit down and talk to 4 transgender people and understand this is a real thing and understand their stories. I'll have to show it to them.
How did you get into that?
I did another video project for somebody else, and somebody saw what I did, and they were like, "Hey, does he do blah blah blah?" And so I was like, this lady who runs this business wanted. I'm like, as soon as the first person I talked to, I'm like, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to humanize these people. They're not freaks. These are people they're people. Yes, people. And so I have to show them to them. Every time I watch them, I'm like, man, it's heavy, because there's this one woman who used to be a man that's older that waited years, to do it, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum was this young person, 23 years old, and they teach them how to, mannerisms of being a woman and all these things. I know some people hate on that or whatever. You are what you are. If you feel that's what you are, that's what you are.
And even if you struggle with how to accept it and how to let that into your world, right? You should still understand the story and appreciate the story of someone who is dealing with something. And they are working their way through it. Whether or not you like the path they've chosen, you agree with the path they've chosen, none of that matters.
Right.
Because really that's all them and their choice, right? But it's a good story.
It was, dude. It was.
It's a good story.
And so ridiculous.
And by understanding that, I think, and accepting that. I think that's the way you get forward.
Yeah.
That's the way you allow empathy to actually happen, to where then we can have those real conversations.
I had that.
And then you can get to acceptance.
I had that conversation today with somebody at City Hall. I'm like, you have to accept people for where they are. What if you have a perception of what you think they should be doing or acting? I'm like, that's you projecting.
Yeah.
The best. I tell my kids this all the time. Like I tell my daughter, your mother is who she is. She's 50-something years old. She's not going to change. Now, you can change your reaction to that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but going back to that, when I shot them, it was just so genuine. The story is, you're like, wow.
Was that one of those where, and these are my favorite interviews, you think you know where it's going to go, and then it just...
Oh, absolutely.
Something just happens. I mean, look, honestly, I thought you and I were going to talk about food and beer today. That lasted 30 seconds.
Yes. But, and the person I was working for, she had these ideas. I said, let me handle this. And so literally what I did was I gave them everyone the same 4 questions, and they're totally different. It was, I was, when you're shooting something or you're interviewing someone and you're like, man, this is gold. You're like, oh my God. I'm like, I wish some of my friends could see this. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those deals. I was like, man, you couldn't script this. You couldn't.
Do you like, and this is inside baseball, and then this will be a good interview for me. I don't know about everybody else. Do you like scripted questions? I don't. If I write them down, I feel like I'm going to stick to it. I feel like I'm going to try to use the list of questions.
Well, I like scripted questions, but then depending on what they say, I might go a different direction. But in that scenario, it was very specific to this organization that we're helping them.
That's true.
How has this person impacted your life? How has this organization impacted your life? And generally the first question was, tell me your story. How did you figure out that you needed to transform? And there were tears. It was the most ridiculous, thing in the world. Now I could barely get to them to pay me, but that's a different story. But but the final product, and I gave her a sweetheart deal because I did it because it was a friend of mine. So I'll do it for you, and this is what I'm going to do.
Well,
but it was worth more to me than what I got paid.
Look, we all do this. We do what we do for career and for living, right?
Right.
We want to get paid.
Right.
But there is a reward for telling a good story. I mean, the reason people we do this is there's a reward for that good story. I mean, There's just a feeling you get that's, I always go back to one of my favorite interviews since I started this podcast, and really it's a sandbox. I get to meet people and just talk,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, just go.
Is longtime Lee Summit minister Hubert Neth,
okay,
who I've known forever because when I was at the Journal, he would submit his poems, and I sat down with him a couple years ago just because he's Hubert Neth and he's been around forever and he's so nice. And I talked to him. I had a list of 8 questions, things I wanted to go. I asked him the first question.
Right. And that's cool.
And then it just went where it went. And I remember walking out of that. Well, I had met him at his church and interviewed him inside one of the offices. And I remember walking out of the church into my car, and all I could think of, I called my wife and said, "Hey, I'm coming home." She asked how the interview went, and I said, "Well, it was amazing for me." I don't know what anybody else is going to think.
Was it good for you?
But it was an amazing just back and forth conversation about people, about his job, about faith and where people are in faith, and he's a guy who's a minister, and here's me, a giant cynic who has trouble saying the word church sometimes, right? But we just kind of met and had this really cool conversation.
Come on, Nick, you're a talker, just like I'm a talker. That's why. That's true. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, even as long as I've known you, you're a talker.
That's true.
And that's fine because we have things to say. They may not be important, but they're important to us.
Well, look, hey, we're gonna wrap this up. But people want to hear more of the Nigel Knight voice, the amazing radio microphone voice of Nigel.
Yeah.
You do some trivia nights at some various bars, around town, some of the microbrews.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
Crane Brewing on Mondays, 7 to 9. Geeks Who Drink. That's the name of the quiz. We don't call it trivia, call it quiz.
Okay.
Wednesdays at Diametric Brewing here in Lee Summit. If you haven't been there, you're doing it wrong. Just saying. Great local business. 7 to 9 on Wednesdays. But if you just want to listen to me, I know if you have not Comcast. Yeah, Comcast. I think that's channel 7. Spectrum is channel 2. Channel 139 on what is that? What is it? Google. And then there's AT&T. I forget what number that is. But I do most of the voiceovers on there is still me. I'm recruiting people in City Hall to do more voiceovers. But
if you're just walking down 3rd Street in Lee Summit, you see the really tall guy.
Yeah.
Strutting around.
Yeah. So that's where you can find me, or you can follow me on Twitter.
What's your Twitter handle?
At Nigel Lloyd George.
Nice.
Because I have 2 middle names because I'm British. Because
you're British.
Just because I can.
And there's really no other reason. Just because I'm British.
Because I'm British.
Because you're British.
Because of my mother. So.
You mentioned Diametric. We'll close with this. We are lucky in Lee Summit that we have our own slew of microbrews.
Yep.
Right here in town. So we've got 4. Diametric. We've got Fringe in downtown. We've got Smoke in downtown.
Grains
and we've got Grains and Taps
in
downtown. And then those good eggs over from Martin City just
brought
their stuff over into Lee Summit.
They're right off of downtown.
So they're here as well. Do we count they're not brewing here, so do we count them as a
well, you would be correct. So it's technically a tap room, but still it's all their own beer, so.
Right.
And it's not traveling far, so it's fresh.
It's still fresh. Well, Nigel, I appreciate you coming in and being my emergency guest. This was fun. I thought we were going to talk about Restaurant Week and beer, and instead we started talking about storytelling, which since I'm a talker, that's my favorite thing.
I'm glad to come up. I'm glad to come off the bench.
And one last thing. Beware, there's something else brewing. You're going to hear more Nigel voice coming up soon, so stay tuned. We'll talk to everybody on Monday. You have been listening to Lee Summit Town Hall, a Link to Lee Summit podcast with hosts Nick Parker and Jason Norberry. A proud member of the Fredcast Network, you can subscribe to this podcast on most of your favorite podcast apps and catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all the news, analysis, and conversations on the Lee Summit community. Connect with us on Facebook at Link to Lee Summit or on Twitter at LS Town Hall.